Karibuni nyote, habari za asubuhi, and maybe allow me to sign. Good morning. My name is Nuru, N-U-R-U. I'm learning how to sign, and it's really nice to see you all. So we are here talking about digital accessibility within the financial services sector. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 40% of Africans, or 300 million people in Africa, are living with disabilities. Our panel today is going to be talking about best practices and needed policies to ensure that these 300 million people are not left behind. Broadly, the role of the financial services sector is fourfold. The role of the sector is intermediation, which is really a fancy word of saying moving capital from savers and investors to where it is needed most. The second role of the financial services sector, which includes banks, pension funds, insurance agencies, savings and credits unions, the second role of the sector is payments facilitation, facilitating the movement of money or the movement of value. The third role of the financial services sector is risk mitigation, and the fourth is wealth creation. So when you think about the real role of the financial services sector, and when you think about the 300 million people who are living with disabilities on the continent, you really have to realize and appreciate that a lot of work needs to be done to not only bring dignity and empowerment to this banking population, but also to ensure that they thrive. So we're very excited with the panel that we have here today, because not only are they experts in their area and champions within their organizations, they're very passionate about persons helping and enabling and empowering persons living with disabilities. Allow me to introduce our panel. We have Honorable Jane Ocharo. Honorable Jane Ocharo is a respected visually impaired advocate of the High Court of Nairobi. Welcome, Honorable Ocharo. We have Tamara Cook. Sorry, I should say Tamara Cook. Tamara Cook. Tamara is the CEO of Financial Sector Deepening Kenya. FSD Kenya leads on bringing in policies and best practice standards within the financial sector, focusing on low-income households and enterprises. We also have with us Judith Sidi Odhiambo. Judith Sidi Odhiambo is the Group Head of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs at KCB. KCB Group is one of the largest banks in the East Africa region. We also have Mr. Gerald Warui. Mr. Warui is the Managing Director of Equity Bank Kenya. And Equity Bank has been recognized globally for being that one institution in East Africa that brought dignity and respect to persons in the low-income sector. So we thank you, Mr. Warui, also for being with us. I think the most important person probably on this panel is Ms. Irene Mbari-Kirika. Ms. Irene is the founder of Enable, and she's been a champion for persons living with disabilities in Kenya and the region for more than 20 years. And we really respect what she's been able to do. And she is really the reason why we're here. So without any further ado, allow me to ask Irene to quickly say hello to everybody. And as you do that, I know that, Irene, Kenya Bankers Association, where I work, and Financial Sector Deepening Kenya has partnered with your organization on a very interesting project to bring inclusivity for persons living with disabilities within the banking sector. So it's a novel project to advance digital accessibility. So could you please just tell us about that as we set the scene for the conversation? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nuru, for the very introduction. I do remember the first time we had this conversation, so I feel very humbled to actually be sitting here today to actually talk about having results and having gone through the process. So I thank you for embracing digital accessibility. So what I have to say about the project is that it's a very good project. It's a pilot project. And what's interesting is that it's a combination of about 7 banks that have come together in Kenya. And this includes KCB Bank, Equity Bank, Family Bank, Cooperative Bank, Rafiki Bank, and Standard Chartered. And the whole purpose is really to do an assessment, an industry assessment, to see where do they stand when it comes to digital accessibility. What we did is we focused on lived experiences of people with disabilities, especially the hearing impaired, the visually impaired, and people with mobility. And the purpose of this whole report is to be able to also tie into the technical piece. So there's the lived experiences, But also the technical piece, now we go to the banking products and we test the mobile applications. When you talk about mobile money transfer, can people really transfer money if they have a disability? Can we open a bank account independently? Because as you know, all the financial services you offer are very private experience. So it's about making sure that people are independent to access information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene, for setting the scene for this conversation, because indeed it's so important that we bring in dignity and empower the banking public to be able to transact. And remember what I mentioned about the role of the financial services sector. It includes not only facilitating payments and intermediation, but it also includes wealth creation. And that's where empowerment comes in. Allow me to ask Mr. Gerald Warui to unmute his line and really just kind of share with us how Equity Bank has helped to advance innovation and promote diversity and inclusion with a special focus on the vulnerable groups. Equity has a unique story. Mr. Warui, can you please touch on that? And as you do that, please can you speak to what you think would be the best way to expedite implementation of digital accessibility in products and services in the financial sector? Karibu, Mr. Warui.
Thank you very much, Nul, and good morning to everyone, all the people who are on this forum. As you have mentioned, my name is Gerald Warui. I'm MD Kenya. I joined the bank 22 years ago. For those who may not know the history of Equity Bank, we are 36 years old. We are now in 6 countries. We are in Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, and DRC. And we have a total population we are banking of 14 million customers. We have an asset base or a balance sheet size of almost 10 billion US dollars. That is almost 1 trillion Kenya shillings, with a market capitalization of $1.6 million. So basically that is equity for those who may not be aware. In terms of our history, I think what you are mentioning in terms of digital accessibility, I think this has been at the center of our philosophies since we started as a building society. And this is where, if you look at our purpose, the reason why we exist, we believe we exist to transform lives, give dignity, expand opportunity for wealth creation. And by this, I mean, it's about giving accessibility to everyone that we are banking, irrespective of their status, whether it's physically disabled, whether there is a visual, whether there is audio. We are here to bank every other person. In terms of what we are doing, we are really focusing on digitization. That is what we are now currently focusing on. And with the digitization, and this is what about in terms of innovation, we have quite a number of innovative products, and these innovative products, we are channeling them to various digital channels so that we can be able to reach every other person, irrespective of where they are. If you look at 2011, we were the one who started agency banking. We have about 53,000 agents, whereby we have taken banking services closer to the people. That when you walk out, you are able to see an agent. And this one is actually one of the areas that we have realized is able to meet those who have got physical challenges, so that you don't have to travel, you don't have to use money, you can be able to do banking wherever you are. The other things that we are also doing is coming up with those digital platforms that can be accessible to people with the physical disabilities. And I want to point like there is one that we are already innovating, which will be rolling out soon in terms of voice banking, and I think that will be very, very critical to the people with that type of status. So we believe innovations, coming up with the modern products. We believe in terms of coming up with the modern channels. When you talk about mobile banking, we have quite a number of our customers who are using mobile banking, and we learned a lot, especially during the COVID season, even now, whereby people were restricted into traveling. And this is where we as Equity Bank, we believe banking is no longer going to the brick and mortar. Banking is now is no longer a place where you go, but something you do. That you don't have to go to the bank or to go to the brick and mortar. When you have the gadget, the mobile banking, you can do whatever you want to do in terms of transferring money, in terms of payments, in terms of paying salaries. And I believe this is actually coming out very, very handy in terms of supporting this type of customers that we are banking. Let me also say that the other things that we are also doing is that we also have to show or to demonstrate how serious we have taken it as a bank. We have a fully fledged department that takes care of the vulnerable of customers, whether it is the aged, children, people with their disabilities. We have a department that is managed by a general manager. And also to demonstrate what we have been able to do, we have been able to reach 1.6 million households, and we have also been able to reach 3.3 million individuals. And these are people who have got either they are vulnerable, whether they are aged, and also children that we are also banking. So far, we have also been able to utilize, or maybe in terms of resources, what we have used in terms of resources, almost 75 billion Kenya shillings that we have been able to make payments using the platforms that we are. So we believe in digital accessibility, because with the digital accessibility, you are able to reach everybody. You are able to ensure that there is financial inclusion, there is full inclusion, social inclusion also, because when you look at also our mission statement, what we do is actually we offer integrated financial services that socially and economically empower customers, businesses, and also communities. So we are very we are actually doing all what needs to be done to ensure that we are banking everybody without exclusion. And the other thing is that also in terms of our philosophies is to ensure that we serve our customers with humility, we serve our customers with dignity, so that whenever they come to our banking hall, irrespective of their status, we are able to work with them. And this is something that we believe in, because we believe vulnerable people are also bankable, and it has been demonstrated because they are involving themselves with the economic activities out there. And we have quite a number of them that are banking with us. I want to take this opportunity to really say a big thank you to all of them who are banking with us, and also extend a hand for those who are not banking with us to also join us. So what I want to say is that we have quite a number of digital products that we have rolled out. We have quite a number of digital channels that we have rolled out to create accessibility so that ease of banking becomes affordable to every other person. So I think that is what I really want to say in terms of what we are doing. So we are doing quite a lot in terms of ensuring that we are touching lives, we are touching lives and livelihoods out there. Thank you, Nuru.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gerald, for that wonderful overview about Equity Bank's history, how you as a building society serving maybe 100 or so what we call mamambogas and farmers outside of the Nairobi urban center. And now you have moved, not only crossing counties, you have crossed boundaries. You're now in 6 countries, banking 14 million. And you started off with the novel idea that everybody has a right to have a bank account. And for those of us who are not aware of the banking history, at the point that Equity Bank started, very few Africans felt that they had dignity within the banking sector. So they were able to redefine and transform the sector by really bringing in this idea that everyone has a right and we must have dignity. And I think dignity is really the key word. And really what Mr. Warui has really touched on is the fact that by leveraging on digital technology, you are able to reach and bring banking closer to the people. So that's just wonderful what you talked about. And you really talked about this aspect of having a responsive and modern products. So I think for those of us in the financial sector who are on this session, we've learned a lot about how to leverage technology. Equity Bank is going to be releasing voice banking, and they also have a department dedicated to the vulnerable. So these are some of those mechanisms and policies that institutions place to help empower their customers. Allow me to now switch gears and ask Tamara to unmute her line. Tamara, FSD Kenya and Africa as well has really been known for helping to shape policy in the space of financial inclusion and also financial literacy. And I think Mr. Warui and the Equity Bank example about how when you design your product and your strategy around meeting a need and bringing dignity and respect, the money comes. The money comes. So, and I remember how Irene Kirika had told me at one time that when you design for design for everybody. And indeed, we see in the Equity Bank case, when they designed for the low income segment, they were able to design for everybody. May you tell us how you have found through the FSD experience, how financial inclusion, particularly looking at marginalized groups, what are those nuggets borrow and we can learn from about really leveling the playing field and bringing in financial inclusion, really just touching on marginalized groups? Maybe you can share your thoughts.
Thank you, Nuru. And it's great to be a part of this panel with such amazing panelists. I'd like to start with a story, and this is a very low-tech way of doing it, but this is Kangomo. And she's a woman that we met through our Building Livelihoods project in Marsabit. She's a visually impaired woman. She was widowed when her husband was killed by cattle rustlers. And at that time, his family took all the cattle. So she was really left destitute. And she didn't have any money or any way of starting a livelihood. Luckily, and some of you may have heard the Minister of Labor and Social Protection talk this morning about the importance of cash transfers. She is a recipient of the Hunger Safety Net program, which is a cash transfer to vulnerable people in the arid and semi-arid lands. And when she received that, it was enough to get her started and to start saving. And through the project that we've been doing to help her not only receive the cash transfer, but build on the cash transfer to build a livelihood. She's joined a community group and learned through that community group how to borrow, how to save, how to start a business, how to improve her business. And what we see is that she has dignity. You were talking about that. Mr. Warui was talking about that. She has dignity because she's able to not sleep hungry, to grow her business. And people see her as a respected business leader in the community. And it all started with that cash transfer, but not just the cash transfer, leveraging financial services on top. When we talk to the formal financial services sector, we talk about what you mentioned, Nuru, about needs, but we also say that there's a lot you can learn from the informal sector in Kenya, especially the informal financial sector and how it interacts. And I think this is another great example of how the formal financial sector can learn from the community and the way the community comes around and supports people with disabilities. Because what we see is those with mobility issues, visually impaired, hearing impaired, is that their community may run errands for them, may help pick up things for them. And this happens in a very organic way. And I think that there's a way that the financial sector can learn about how to support the community and these people with disabilities in the same way that their communities support them. One example I'd like to share is how visually impaired people rely on often text-to-speech. And so their text might be read out loud. So let's say they're trying to do mobile banking or mobile money. If they don't have a headset or if they need to speak it, it means that they've lost their privacy if anyone's around. You can imagine getting a text, "You have received 3,000 shillings," and everyone around you like, "Ooh, can I have a bit?" And so I think the introduction that Safaricom had of the Braille Watch was a way to really enable people who cannot see to have privacy in their financial services. Now, when we earlier today, you may have heard Engineer Obam talk about the digital economy strategy and how Chapter 7 of the digital economy strategy deals with inclusion and the importance of technology to really help low-income people seize the opportunities that they need. But when we were looking at the data, we know that almost 1 million people, according to the Kenyan census, are living with disabilities. But the landmark FinAccess, which looks at the financial services sector, did not yet have a question on those living with disabilities. And so I'm I'm pleased to say that this year, when they were designing the survey, it was the first question that was added. So next year's survey, which will go into the field, it was supposed to go this year, but obviously with COVID, it had to be delayed, will include data on people with disabilities. And that's something that the Kenya Bankers Association and others can use to design the products that we need. Maybe I'll just say in closing that we are delighted to partner with Enable and KBA on this research to look at how the financial services sector, especially the banking sector, can be more inclusive. And I think it's important to note that the banking sector has been doing lots of things to be inclusive. When Gerald and I worked together many years ago, I remember an example of a branch manager at Equity building a lower desk for those who were physically disabled because they couldn't reach the one to sign. And so they just got a carpenter and built a lower desk, and that's great. These one-off solutions and real care from bank staff is important, but even more important than one-off solutions are policies and products that are designed with these disabilities in mind. And as Nuru said, if we can do that, then we can design for everyone, and we can really cross that exclusion barrier that exists. I'd also like to say FSD Kenya is focused on Kenya, but we're part of a sisterhood of FSDs across the continent. There are 9 other countries, and we're all looking at how can we help finance be more inclusive and work for the real economy. Thank you, Nuru.
Fantastic, Tamara. Thank you so much. And I think for those of us who have not had a chance to read the FSD diaries, the FSD financial FinAccess diaries, and also the FSD COVID diaries, please take a minute to just make a note of that. And just Google those diaries to just really read those stories. Because indeed, as Tamara has said, when you really speak to the community and understand what they're going through, the challenges they're going through in terms of how to be resilient, especially within this COVID environment, you realize that there's so many ideas for innovation and product relevance that can come up. So thank you so much, Tamara, for everything that you're doing. Allow me to just switch gears now and ask Honorable Jane Ocharo to unmute her line, or maybe Dan, you can assist us by unmuting Honorable Ocharo's line. Honorable Ocharo, just listening to what Irene has shared, what Gerald has shared, what Tamara has shared in terms of bringing dignity and respect to persons living with disabilities, how do we move from living with to thriving with disabilities? What are those challenges that you faced, not only with banking, because the financial sector is broad, it includes insurance, it includes fund management, pension management. So maybe can you speak broadly about the challenges you face and what policies? Tamara talked about the need for policies, both I think at the institutional and the sector level, and also national level as we have in our constitutions in our various countries. What types of policies would you advocate for to support digital accessibility within the financial sector, not only in Kenya, but across the continent? Please welcome Honorable Ocharo. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as Honorable Ocharo, I think she's dropped off, but she's going to come right back.
I'm back.
Oh, fantastic. Karibu.
I'm sorry.
No worries, you're fine. Please welcome back. Yes. I don't know if you heard the question I asked. Okay, I'll say it again, if it's okay with you. I was asking, what are some of those digital challenges that you have faced within the financial sector? And remember, the financial sector is broad. It's not only banks, it includes insurance, it includes pension, the fund managers within pension, savings and credits unions. So what kind of challenges do people living with disabilities face? And how can we move you from being a person living with disabilities to a person thriving with disabilities? Maybe you can share your thoughts. Karibu.
All right, thank you. In fact, I went for a conference in Machakos. I'm disconnected, I'm on, but I hope I'm on now. This is Mrs. Ocharo. I am a magistrate, I work in Milimani. The question is, since I got employed in 2012, with my colleagues, we had moved from one bank to another to access banking services. In one bank, we were told you cannot be given an ATM. We cannot even give you a SIM card. Some banks have SIM cards where you can trade. So that was a challenge we had. Some banks are compliant. Some of them have even ATM with brails. So some of the banks are friendly. They are supporting, because in this
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure. Do we hear Honorable Ocharo, or is it? I don't know. Dan, are we still online with Honorable Ocharo? Irene, can you see? Can you hear me?
No, she's there, but there's her microphone is muted.
Dan, can you assist unmute her?
I'm trying to do that.
Thank you. So technology is a challenge. I think as we
she's back.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, fantastic. Karibu, please continue. You're talking about how in 2012 you and your colleagues had challenges in terms of opening up accounts, and you mentioned that some banks are friendly, so you may continue from that point.
Yes. So I'm saying we were able to get some, we were like window shopping because of our disability. So we went to some banks, they were saying you cannot open up a bank.
Oh.
You cannot open an account unless you cannot be given even last week. My colleague went to open an account and a SIM card for mobile banking. So it's easier said than done. In banking institutions, they have a long way to go. Some have moved, some are behind, because some of them even have an ATM which has a braille keyboard. Have I been heard?
Yes, ma'am. So we've picked up everything that you've said. I don't know if there's any other thought that you might want to share in terms of what types of policies, what types of products would you like to see in the financial sector?
Okay, before I go for that, as a lawyer, I must say something, because maybe to sensitize the bankers. What we need is like the law says contract. Yeah, the law of contract says you are able to contract as long as you're over 18 and you're of sound mind. Now the issue of visual impairment does not make one unsound mind. So what I'm saying is either most of these institutions need people like my friend Irene. I call her my friend because I always participate in training sessions. So if they can liaise with such banks and maybe give them sensitization that these people, in fact, if I may say, the disabled person who work, we have exemption of tax up to 150,000. If I save this 150,000 in a bank, will they not make business? So it's not that we are disabled, we are also important. Thank you. About now the policies, okay, yes. About the policies, sorry?
Please continue.
About the policies, like where I work, we have a disability policy where we're about now the 5%. Even the banking sector should know that the Constitution says they should employ 5%. In the judiciary, about 3%. So we have a disability policy, and I'm happy to say that I was among those people who drafted that policy. It's a policy which is there. When you employ an employee who is challenged, they will know what are
okay.
So they must have a policy in issues of like special interest group. I don't want to advocate for only disabled persons. We also have people who are disabled by the nature of like age elderly, they are disabled, lactating mothers, they cannot be queuing they are lactating their children. The expectant mothers, they should have a policy. When you walk to a bank, you are expectant, you're supposed to be directed somewhere, you are assisted, you go. So most of it is sensitization. If the managers, if the management of a bank says they have such policies, then it should be escalated to the ground where we access the services. So I'm saying it's easier said than done.
Thank you, Honorable Ocharo. What a wonderful, I think you said so many powerful words, particularly about the fact that you are not only constitutionally, you have rights, but you are also economically viable. So thank you for that. And I think indeed, as you say, some banks are friendly, other banks have some way to go. In the broader financial services sector, I'm sure within even the insurance sector, there's some ways to go. Fund management as well, and cooperative societies and unions. But I think, Honorable Ocharo, I think why today's panel is so special is because of what Irene mentioned earlier, the fact that we have 7 banks in Kenya that have come together. They have been working with Enable very closely for the past 2 to 3 months, going through their systems to see how can we become more accessible from a digital perspective. Not only from a mobile banking perspective, but also from a website, just general information. Are people who are hard of hearing, people who are visually impaired, are they able to come to our website to really understand what our institution is and how they can transact with us? So I think the journey has begun. The journey of 1,000 miles has begun, but thankfully, because of technology and the 4th industrial revolution, I think we're going to leapfrog a lot of processes and time, which is why I have this favorite term called COVID Kairos. COVID Kairos. Kairos is a Greek word for window of opportunity. And I think this is the window of opportunity for policymakers within the financial sector to really look at how can we empower persons living with disabilities so they can thrive with their situation. So thank you so much, Honorable Ocharo, for sharing. Please. Yes, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add it has escaped my mind, but I remember. I wanted to say, enable, if they are going they are doing something with the banks, they should also involve users like us. Maybe they want to find out what does the people with the blindness want. Even if the organization of Madam Irene is involved, they should also, maybe it's with a small fee, they can do a study, they can do a small research, even from the street. Then they also find out what do these people want, so that even if they partner, they will be able to have a precise, concise services for specific persons. What I'm saying, disability is not generic. It is different. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Honorable Ocharo. And I know you told me to call you Jane, but I refuse to call you Jane.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for your point. And indeed, Irene is going to come back and just share with us what the project, the Digital Accessibility Project, is touching on. And indeed, there is a research element. But indeed, this is that COVID Kairos for persons living with disabilities in the financial sector in East Africa, not only in Kenya, because the banks that are part of this project operate right across East and Central Africa. And within East and Central Africa, the banking sector actually holds the most assets within financial services. So when you see banks moving, Honorable Ocharo said we need everyone to move. So when you see banks moving to really support persons with disabilities, everybody else is going to follow through. So let's keep the faith. Allow me to switch to Judith Sidi-Odhiambo with KCB. Judith, please unmute your line. What is your bank's approach to sustainable finance? I know KCB has been an advocate for sustainable finance for a very long time. How specifically have you been promoting policies and mechanisms that promote digital accessibility for persons living with disabilities, not only here in Kenya, but across the continent? Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Nuru, and thank you all. It's good to have this conversation at the table. I was just telling Irene that finally we're on the table with it. We've had quite a number of conversations with her on this matter. And it's good that all like-minded stakeholders are here today just to share what are some of the things can be done. Thank you, Honorable Ocharo, for your feedback. I've taken notes on your feedback, or some of those things are things that we can implement immediately, and just look at what are some of the things that we can be able to accommodate even as we make plans for the coming years. So briefly, KCB, as you all know, KCB is East Africa's largest bank. And of course, we are also in six countries in the East African region, including South Sudan and Ethiopia, where we have a representative office. And so just to take up on what Nuru has said is, yes, we have been picking up some of the items that we can be able to do. We do also have policies that guide us, and the three policies that normally guide us in terms of ensuring that we have inclusion and diversity, including persons with disability, are gender and financial inclusion. We also have a stakeholder policy on diversity, and then we also have a sustainability policy. So those policies give much more details on how we should be able to approach our gender and financial inclusion, and we're able to work closely with the special needs education, who are also able to give us some feedback on our policy before it went for approval, on what are the areas, from a banking perspective, that you can be able to include. So it all includes capacity building, retraining our staff, making sure that in terms of products and innovation, all that is included to be able to make it manageable. So we do have some immediate plans that we did, and some of the immediate plans that we have, of course implemented, is through our KCB Foundation. Most of you must be aware about our Tujiajiri. This is our youth empowerment program that we've had for almost 4 years. And what we have done is that even as we take up students to be able to go through this program, where so far we have 1,000 of them. So we take 5% of that number to be persons with disability. So we are training them on technical skills, entrepreneurial skills, agribusiness, automotive engineering, beauty and personal care, construction, and even domestic services. And some of them have also started their businesses. And so as a bank, we have also given them that lending capability. So from that, we are also getting learnings to see how best can we improve on it, how can we make it better, what are the challenges that need to be addressed, and then what else can we do also to make it better and have more people included into the program. Also, we have our business development services, which also provides financial support to persons living with disability, especially in our micro and small businesses. And part of them is just to ensure that they're able to start startups, because most of them you'll find they're starting up their businesses, so guiding them to see how they can start up their businesses. And then also through our partnership with Kenya Institute of Special Education, and in line, of course, with the Vision 2030 objective to address issues that affect persons with disability, we have recruited 1,300 students with disability that we are training them at secondary schools across the counties in Kenya, so that they can be able also to get education, because we're also looking ahead that once they are able to get a good education, we are able to sponsor them until university and they complete, they will also join us to be our future employees. And therefore, they'll be able also to help us learn more and also be able to see, even as our employees, how best then do we improve even our employee services also to them. So those are some of the contributions that we have made. And of course, through this partnership, which we are there with the NABLA, which has been ongoing. And we are hoping that through this, we shall be able to look at our websites, our mobile applications, our online banking channels, our social media, as well as our ATMs, and also our employment software applications. How best can we make sure that all these products, especially the digital products, because we've realized the digital platform is our Kairos, as what Nuru has said. So we are taking advantage, because that's where we'll get quick wins, and also we shall be able to move faster to implement products and services that can actually touch our persons living with disability, and also to scale, making sure that we have larger numbers that we can also bring on board, because we are told already 15% of our population is persons with disability. So that's a very big number. So where are they? Even when you look at our numbers, they're quite small, but where are all these people? How do we then engage them? How do we make sure that they become productive members of our society? And therefore, this program for persons with disability, we have taken it very keen, also looking at our sustainable development goals. Part of it is to look at addressing issues of inequality. So that fits in very well with what we are doing. And then addressing also issues of poverty. That is also one of the SDGs that we have adopted. And so we are hoping that with those two SDGs, to be able to address that and be able to make sure that we, as much as possible, persons with disability, whatever their case, they can be productive members of our society. They can be able to generate their own wealth, lead a dignified lifestyle within their country of operation, and be able to move on with their lives. So we are hoping that through this program, because most of the time in banking we say you must have a policy. So the good thing now, the policies are in place. Now the issue is to see then how do we fast track so that then we can have much more positive stories to talk about on what we are doing to this section of society. So thank you, and over to you, Nuru.
Thank you so much, Judith. Thank you so much, Judith, for your wonderful comments. And I think what is wonderful about what Judith said, and we're about to almost wrap up because we're almost at time. I think what Judith said that was really quite powerful, and what she's introduced to this conversation, is the aspect of youth and capacity building, and really how do we support youth to start businesses and to be empowered to be independent. And according to the World % of Africa are living with disabilities. So we're talking about 45 million young people on the continent who are living with disabilities. And the other interesting point that Judith has touched on is the issue of data. And the way she talked about data is how she said, where are our customers living with disabilities? There is this term called KYC. It's our industry jargon. KYC means know your customer. And it's basically a guideline that really makes sure you understand your customer, understand their transactions. But we really need to know our customers, leveraging on technology to really understand our customer profiles. Mr. Warui at the beginning talked about bringing banking services closer to the customer. That's really about moving banking from being a transaction to being an experience. So allow us to touch on the two questions that have come on Slido. Two questions have been posted on the Slido app. One is, are banks involving disabled customers in the design process for web and app? And the second question is, have banks thought about including people with learning disabilities like dyslexia and mental health problems in this digital accessibility project? So allow me to pose those questions to Irene Mbari-Kirika as she gives us a quick overview of this digital accessibility project that Enable has with Kenya Bankers Association and FSD Kenya. As you just give us a quick overview. Please, back to you, Irene.
Thanks, Nuru. These are two great questions, and the answer for me, first off, based on the data we've collected and what we've seen, both on the human side and technical side, the banks are not including people with disabilities in the design process. The banks do not know people with disabilities, so you cannot design for people that you do not know. Most banks do not even have information about customers with disabilities. So if you don't have information about the customers, how are you going to design anything? So that's one major problem that we found. We also found that in terms of dyslexia, no, this is not happening at this time. And in general, just disabilities. They're not, the products that are being developed are not geared towards people with disabilities. So one, banks actually need to make an effort, a conscious effort to capture data. And when you capture data, you get to know the people who you're serving, you get to know their needs. But also something that needs to happen is an internal process. Banks need to employ people with disabilities. If you're going to know people with disabilities, you're not just going to know them by having them as your customers. they need to be your employees. They can become your accessibility experts because they live that life. And then it makes it easier for you to actually now say, we know people with disabilities. So there are two ways to look at it. The other issue we came across, or another recommendation we have really, is the bank staff need to be fully trained. And that's one gap we found. And please remember that when when a customer comes into the bank, the first person they meet is the security guard at the front. So when it comes to training, you need to start with the security guard, because if I walk in and I'm deaf, will that security guard know how to work with me, or if I'm blind? And that's really, really critical. Those were some of the things that were coming out. Something else we also found is that people were very clear that the banks need to focus on the physical infrastructure for accessibility, but also now, of course, the mobile money applications, the digital infrastructure of what we were talking about. One person gave an example and said, some services are offered in the bank or on your mobile app. If you do it on your mobile app, it's free. If you go into the bank, they charge you. The mobile app is not accessible, so I don't have a choice, I have to go in. But this is just a clear indication of how the banks do not really understand the needs of people with disabilities. So for me, what I would say is the banks need to make a conscious effort to start learning who people with disabilities are, what their needs are, capture their data, connect with them, learn their needs, so that now you can consciously develop products for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. And really, that is the end of our session. Allow me to just really wrap up on some of the key points that have been brought up by our wonderful panel. One point that's coming out very strongly is the need to leverage on digital technology and digital infrastructure. Number two is learn from the persons living with disabilities community. Design with these customers, not only with them in mind, but actually invite them into the design process, the user journey process. You cannot design if they're not part of the process. That means we also need to think about employing persons living with disabilities, including learning disabilities, as one of our colleagues here on Slido has raised. The other aspect is policies and products, and Honorable Ocharo and also Ms. Judith talked about this. So did Tamara. And we were reminded about the law of contracts, that as long as you're 18, you should be able to transact. So we should not treat a disability as an inability. And then finally, the very important aspect of capacity building and sensitization, which is a story of financial literacy and empowerment, and not only educating our customers and empowering our customers, but also educating and training our staff. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our session. We're done. Let's remember the COVID Kairos is open for persons living with disabilities. Let's leverage on digital technology to move this key segment, our brothers and sisters, from living with to thriving with a disability. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Asante sana Nuru. I've had Nuru speak before in other panels, and there's something about her passion. There's something about her passion on gender banking issues. So Nuru, thank you for leading us in this session.
Happy to see you here, Wanda. I'm so happy to see you. I know I sent you on Twitter when this event was coming up. I was like, do you know about this conference? So it's so wonderful.
Asante sana. Now we have a reason to meet. So much profound issues that are coming about. Banking is no longer an issue of brick and mortar. Vulnerable people are bankable. How do we move from living with a disability to thriving with a disability? Know your customer, leverage on technology, and we need to move banking from a transaction to an experience. What a power-packed session. Thank you, Nuru, and thank you to everybody, all the panelists. That was beautiful. So we just remind everybody who joined or those who are joining now that you can send your questions on the Slido app, get it on Play Store or App Store. Our conference passcode is #A11YAfrica. So we that was really great. Thank you to Financial Services Deepening for sponsoring and for supporting this session. We are moving to a very short break, and when we come back, we'll have a trailblazer. We'll have a lady who has, against all odds, if that is a cliche to use. So we'll see you in 2 minutes.